Hi, my name's Corey, and today I'm going to talk about being a worship leader, specifically for the first time. Now, in college, I was involved with crew and I served on the worship team for a couple years. And my last year in school, one of the staff members pulled me aside and they asked me that ever so important question. They said, Corey, would you consider leading our worship team this year? Now, I had all the feels in response to this. I was excited, I was nervous, and honestly, I felt really overwhelmed. Like, I'd been doing music for a long time, but I'd never led a worship team and been a worship leader. That felt so different to me. I didn't know where to even begin. Well, today I want to share with you some things I've learned being a worship leader over the last couple of years and leading different teams and leading in different contexts. And hopefully this will help you as you start your worship leading journey. And it's a lot of what I would have told myself back then. The first thing that is so important in being a worship leader is prayer. Prayer is the foundation of all that we do. We want to be proactive in prayer and having God asking Him to go before us in all of our planning and our leading and not have it be a reactive thing or like an afterthought. So, a practical way that you can get prayer in your worship leading is to pray before you sit down to plan, pray before you have rehearsal or your team is about to lead at like a weekly meeting. Make sure that prayer is a regular thing and it's something that you're leading out of rather than depending on your talents or skills to guide you. Having the right posture and perspective when leading worship is super important. So when you look at pop icons and rock stars and people who are playing music and culture, it can be really easy to see that people are praising them and like writing all about them in comments online. It can be easy to let some of that seep into our perspective about what it means to be a worship leader because we're getting on stage and playing music too. But this is where we need to look biblically at what is a worship leader. Biblically, a worship leader is somebody who would lead God's people into a space and create an environment for them to connect and worship Him. We're not about trying to put on a big show or having it be all about us. It's really about serving the people, the congregation that the Lord has put in front of you. So remember, it is not about you. It is about serving people and creating an environment and a space where they can connect with God. Planning and preparation are so key in being a worship leader. It can be really easy, like on a Sunday morning or at a weekly meeting, to look at the worship leader and hear the song they're playing and be like, yeah, I could do that, and not see the different layers of work that actually lead to that moment. So when you're a worship leader, you need to think about logistics and details like, what songs am I going to play? How am I going to run a rehearsal? Who's going to be in the band? How are we going to deal with sound tech issues? There's a lot of different details you need to be thinking about and planning for. Something that's been helpful for me is figuring out what matters most to you in these areas and figuring out how to delegate some of that to people or figuring out systems that work best for you to stay organized. We actually have some videos about things like song arrangement and running a rehearsal and some other stuff that you can check out here on the channel. Personal worship and time to connect with God is so important in being a worship leader. Now, this might seem counterintuitive. You might be thinking, well, don't I need to spend my time, practicing my verbal transitions or how I look on stage? But being able to connect with God personally is really going to impact your ability to lead worship from a stage. I really believe being able to connect with God in different seasons of life, whether it's a season where lots of things are happening and doors are opening and it's positive, or if you're in a more difficult season where things are really hard and there's a lot of problems and God may even feel distant at times, being able to connect with God during all those circumstances is really going to help you as a worship leader connect to the people that you're leading. People are coming in from all different places spiritually and emotionally, and being able to pick songs and to read scriptures that speak to people and meet them in those spaces is really going to show them how God is present with them in the midst of those situations. And the last thing I want to share with you is a phrase that has really impacted my worship leading, and that is, don't do it like them, do it like you. Now, what I mean by this is it can be really easy to look at popular worship culture and see the rising worship leaders doing these things and playing these songs, and, we naturally want to be like, oh, let's play all of their songs, let's dress like them, I might even try to change my voice so I sound like them. But I just want to remind you, God has created you uniquely and gifted you to be a worship leader. And so as you lead worship, it's not so much about copying what other people are doing, but really tapping into who God has created you to be and bringing that fully to the worship leading space. I personally have found a lot of freedom in my worship leading in realizing that I don't have to be somebody that I'm not. I don't have to sound a particular way. I can use how God has created me, my interests, my thoughts on worship leadership, elements that I want to have in worship. And that's really given me an ability to lead people and connect with God in a way in worship that I just feel like I wasn't able to before. So remember, don't do it like them, do it like you. So I hope some of the things I've shared today can be helpful for you in taking your first steps in being a new worship leader. Remember, God has created you uniquely and given you specific talents to be a worship leader. And so remember that and trust His Holy Spirit to guide you as you follow this path of being a worship leader.